All right. With the growing threat to the U.S. power grid, Congress has made an important first step to protect our nation's most critical infrastructures. This week, the House passed unanimously the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, CIPA. With me now is the sponsor of the bill, Arizona Congressman Trent Frank. Good evening, Congressman. This has been a mission of yours for many years, sponsoring legislation for at least 5 years. The resistance has been great. What happened and why now?
Well, I guess, first of all, I just have a great sense of gratitude in my heart right now. You know, I think when the holidays approach, we all kind of get a sense of how precious our families are to us, and the notion that my children and the children of this country would have to face the aftermath of a worst-case EMP event in this country is just almost unthinkable to me. And so I'm deeply grateful. And I have to say to you, Judge, you know, it sometimes takes people like you to remind government that our first purpose is to protect people, protect the people of this country. And you have been a clarion voice. And coincidental with some of your broadcasts, we began to see a lot of movement here. There were other factors, but I'm really encouraged that we're going in the right direction.
Well, and we're all thrilled about this. But very quickly, Congressman, why should Americans care about this?
Well, I think that electromagnetic pulse, both man-made and the potential natural occurrences, could represent one of the more serious national security threats that we face. It's rather ironic to me. Just recently, we were given a copy that was translated by the National Defense University in our country of a military doctrine by Iran that mentioned EMP as a weapon. Sure. More than 20 times. And recently, as you know, the president has given Iran even more time in their inexorable march toward a nuclear weapons capability. So they should care about it. The people of this country should care very much about this issue, because it's simply something that we cannot allow ourselves to be vulnerable to. And at least we're moving in the direction of preventing that vulnerability. All
right. So right now it's passed the House. Lame duck session goes to the Senate. What's going to happen?
Well, there is an outside long shot possibility that the Senate could, you see this, that's unanimous consent, take this to the floor and pass it in the Senate and put it on the president's desk in the next couple of weeks if they chose to. And perhaps the only recommendation or request that I would make of your listeners is that they would call their senators and ask them to do just that. This is something that we all know is necessary. The Critical Infrastructure Protection Act does things that really doesn't gore anyone's ox, and yet it does deal with the issue effectively. It insinuates this issue into our national planning scenarios so that we can prevent and remediate the issue if and when it comes, or to try to prevent it from coming at all. Right. It has a major national effort to give awareness and more research. And it also, most importantly, Judge, it requires the Department of Homeland Security to present and create a plan, a strategic plan to prevent EMP from impacting this country in the way that it possibly could.
Well, you deserve a great deal of credit for your legislative strategy on this, Congressman. If it doesn't happen this term after January, I assume that you're a little more comfortable with it passing?
Now, I am very hopeful. There are a lot of other things that have happened. We've got new information. Even recently, some classified material was released that really emphasized the importance of the issue. So, yes, ma'am, I'm hopeful. Good. And again, I'm grateful to people like yourself, people like Chairman Sessions, a lot of the people, Chairman McCall, that really made this thing move in the recent days. So there are good days ahead, but we can't let up.
No, and we won't. Congressman Trent Franks, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, and with me now, Center for Security Policy President, my friend, Frank Gaffney. All right, Frank, this legislation, a breakthrough, but is it enough?
It is a breakthrough, Judge. As you've heard Congressman Frank say, thanks in no small measure to your efforts, we've seen an awareness building in the Congress that has gotten us to this point in the House. I want to echo what the Congressman said about the necessity of everyone getting in touch with members of the Senate. There is no reason why we should have more time pass before these steps are taken, whether it's the national planning scenario or, more importantly, the plan itself for for hardening our grid. We're on borrowed time, and the good news is we've seen some movement in the Congress. The bad news is this week, the 2nd of December, a group called Silence issued a report that indicated, not only as we were talking about a couple of weeks ago when Admiral Mike Rogers, the director of the National Security Agency, acknowledged to Congress that the Chinese are inside the control systems of our electric grid through cyber techniques. We now know from Silence that the Iranians have been as well. And as you just heard the congressman say, the Iranians have a threat doctrine of a world without America, and they seem to be interested not just in electromagnetic pulse as an attack option, but also cyber warfare. So we're on borrowed time here, and even if none of those things happen, I was at a conference this week with one of the commissioners of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and he actually said, Judge, pray for a mild winter, because if we don't have one, there may be big-time blackouts in New England because of a lack of natural gas, amazingly enough, in that market. And we're seeing the Environmental Protection Agency demand that we take coal-fired plants that are critical to providing surge load capacity taken offline because of environmental concerns. So for all these reasons, we've got to get our act together on this urgently.
Well, clearly, when Mike Rogers talked about the fact that the Chinese and one or two other countries are using techniques to get inside the wire of our grid control systems, not acting would be an enormous disaster for American people. And in fact, I must tell you, Frank, Fox has reported Mary Landrieu lost in Louisiana. I think part of her loss, and I sat in a hearing in Washington, D.C. and watched her, support the local power companies. Oh, everything's okay, and shame on you for even talking about it. I think that's part of the reason she lost.
Well, I think it should be. If it weren't, it should be. And I hope this is a marker down with people like Lisa Murkowski, who will be the chairman of that Energy Committee in the next Congress. And she was at that hearing, as you know. She was the ranking Republican, and she went along with this idea that the only thing that we really need to be concerned about is keeping the American people from knowing about this vulnerability. That's wrong. I hope every one of ththose members of Congress, senators most especially, are on notice now. They have to get this fixed, and we need it done now. Not 6 months from now, not a year and a half from now.
Right. And finally, if it does not pass in the lame duck session, and you talk about hoping for a mild winter, how quickly do you think it'll happen? Mike McCall's going to be the head of Homeland Security. Hopefully they're going to be running with this one. It won't be out of energy. Is that correct?
Well, this whole legislative initiative has circumvented the energy committees in the House and Senate because, frankly, they've been, I'm afraid, under the thumb of the electric utilities, and the utilities don't want this done.
They get money, Frank. Let's talk straight.
They do. But here's the really big development. There is a senator by the name of Ron Johnson from Wisconsin who will be the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate, Michael McCall's counterpart, and he's indicated as recently as Friday at this conference that he is very, very intent on getting this bill handled through the Senate early next year, and we ought to support him in doing that if we can't get it done in this lame duck session, which is really the priority.
All right, Frank Gaffney, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Judge, for all your help.
All right. And coming up, do you think that if it's in print, it's true? Think again. The latest on the Rolling Stone UVA debacle is next.